You are on Tips and Streams with your host, Coca.
What's good, everyone? Welcome back to Tips and Streams. I'm Koken, and I hope you're doing well and feeling locked in wherever you're listening from. All right, let's get to the daily picks. I've got 4 NBA matchups on the card today, so buckle up. We're diving straight into the action. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the Indiana Pacers and Atlanta Hawks. When I break down this matchup, I don't need to overthink it. I look at motivation, rhythm, structure, and how teams handle moments after emotional highs. And for me, this game sets up cleanly in Atlanta's favor. The Hawks come into this one riding momentum, but more importantly, they're starting to show identity. I've watched this league long enough to know that consistency doesn't always come from dominance. Sometimes it comes from clarity. Atlanta has found that over the last couple of games. The ball is moving, the spacing looks cleaner, and their ability to flip the switch defensively late in games has been the biggest difference. That closing stretch against Phoenix wasn't accidental. Holding a team like that to 12 points in the final quarter tells me focus is locked in. What stands out to me most is how this Hawks team is generating offense. They're not relying on one hot hand or bailout shots. They're playing with pace, attacking in waves, and creating advantages through ball movement. When you're leading the league in assists, that's not luck, that's structure. And against an Indiana defense that struggles to contain penetration and gives up clean perimeter looks, that's a dangerous combination. Now let's talk about Indiana. Yes, they're coming off a big road win, and I respect it. But I've been around this league long enough to recognize emotional spikes. That Oklahoma City game was a perfect storm. Elite shooting, maximum focus, and everything breaking their way. I don't expect that level to travel with them. This team has been one of the weakest road teams all season, and that's no coincidence. Their offensive efficiency drops, their rebounding slips, and when the pace turns against them, they struggle to recover. Without their primary organizer, Indiana leans heavily on effort and shot making. That's not a formula I trust on the second stop of a road stretch, especially against a Hawks team that thrives in transition and punishes late rotations. Atlanta doesn't need to be perfect defensively here. They need to play to their strengths, keep the tempo high, and force Indiana to defend multiple actions in one possession. I also trust Atlanta's urgency more. They're still fighting for position, and games like this matter. Indiana, on the other hand, is playing loose basketball with nothing to protect. That can be dangerous in short bursts, but over 48 minutes, structure usually wins. So when I put it all together, the form, the matchup, the pace, and the situation, my read is clear. I'm taking the Atlanta Hawks to win this game at home and cover the 4-point spread. I trust their rhythm, I trust their urgency, and I trust them to control this matchup from the second half on. My money is on Atlanta to get it done. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Portland Trail Blazers and Boston Celtics. When I break down this matchup between Boston and Portland, the first thing I look at is not who wins the game, but how the game is likely to be played. That's where this spread really comes into focus for me. Boston is clearly the better team on paper. They're near the top of the East, they're disciplined defensively, and they've built their identity around spacing the floor and launching threes in volume. Even without their main star, they've stayed competitive because Jaylen Brown has been carrying a massive offensive load. I've watched enough Celtics basketball this season to know they can flip the switch offensively in short bursts and turn a tight game into a double-digit lead in a hurry. But here's the thing. That doesn't automatically mean they separate cleanly. Boston has been grinding lately. A lot of close games, a lot of emotional finishes, and not much margin for error. Their rotation isn't especially deep, and when they don't knock down threes at an elite clip, their offense can stall just enough to keep opponents hanging around. At home, they usually control the game, but they don't always bury teams early. Now let's talk about Portland, because this is where the numbers starts to matter. I've been impressed by how competitive this Blazers group has been over the last few weeks. This is not a team rolling over anymore. They've tightened things up defensively, they're rebounding with real purpose, and they've shown they can survive ugly stretches without completely falling apart. Even with injuries, they've found ways to stay connected for long stretches of games. What really stands out to me is how Portland approaches elite opponents. Against top-tier teams, they don't try to run with them for 48 minutes. They slow things down, they fight on the glass, and they force half-court possessions. That style isn't pretty, but it's effective when you're catching points. Offensively, Portland doesn't need to be great here. They just need to be functional. Shadon Sharp gives them shot creation. Jerami Grant can score without needing plays drawn up. And their rebounding keeps second chances alive. As long as they avoid the disastrous shooting quarters, they're capable of keeping this game within striking distance. Boston will likely lead most of the night. I expect them to control tempo, win the three-point math overall, and dictate stretches of play. But I don't see this as a blowout setup. I see a game where Boston pulls away briefly, Portland responds, and the margin stays uncomfortable longer than expected. That's why, when I line everything up, recent form, matchup dynamics, pace control, and effort level, I'm not rushing to lay a big number here. My money is on the Trailblazers to cover the 10-point spread against the Celtics. I trust Boston to win, but I trust Portland to compete, scrap, and stay close enough to cash this ticket. That's the play I'm riding with. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Chicago Bulls. I'm locked in on Lakers at Bulls tonight, and I'll be honest, this matchup smells like a classic spot where the numbers say one thing, but the rhythm of the game says another. The Lakers roll into Chicago on the back end of a long road swing, and even when a veteran team handles business, that travel grind shows up in the legs, the closeouts, and those little 50-50 plays that decide spreads. Chicago, on the other hand, is riding real heat. Since Josh Giddey has been back in the mix, the Bulls' whole vibe has changed. Even if he's still being managed and not playing full starter minutes, his presence matters because he connects the offense. The ball doesn't stick as much, the pace feels more intentional, and the team looks confident taking and making big shots. And that confidence is loud right now. They've stacked wins, they've stacked covers, and they've done it against legit competition. That's not a fluke run. That's a team playing with belief. Now, I'm not pretending the Lakers can't punch first. They've been finding better rhythm lately, and when Luka Doncic is cooking, the Lakers' offense can look like a cheat code for long stretches. They also have that late-game gear, the kind where one big defensive stand turns into a run, and suddenly the scoreboard flips. But I keep coming back to two things. One, the Lakers can hit these cold pockets where the scoring dries up and possessions get heavy. Two, they're dealing with Austin Reeves being out, and that matters because it removes a stabilizer, especially when the opponent is flying around at home. Chicago's path is pretty clear to me. If they keep launching confidently from deep the way they have lately, and if Kobe White continues to play with that aggressive downhill mentality while also creating for others, the Bulls can keep this game in the mud just enough to make every Lakers bucket feel earned. And if it's close late, I like Chicago's swagger right now. They've already shown they can survive a tight finish, and this is exactly the kind of environment where a streaky team becomes a problem. Because when they're hot, fading them feels like stepping in front of a moving train. So here's where I'm landing. I'm not saying the Lakers can't win the game outright, because their top-end talent is real. But the spread is the bet, and that's where I'm planting my flag. My prediction is the Bulls to cover the 3-point spread against the Lakers in Chicago. I'm riding with the home dog and the current momentum. Give me Chicago plus the points. Today's last prediction is for the game between the Memphis Grizzlies and Houston Rockets. When I break down this matchup between Houston and Memphis, the first thing I do is strip away the surface-level records, and focus on how these teams actually win games, and just as importantly, how they fail to separate from opponents. Yes, Houston comes into this one riding momentum. I've watched them steady themselves after that early January wobble, and I like the way they've leaned into structure. At home, they're disciplined, physical, and comfortable dictating pace. Their defense does real work. Their rebounding creates extra possessions. And offensively, they don't rush anything they don't need to. When this team is locked in, they grind opponents down. But here's where I pause, and where the number starts to matter more than the matchup. Houston doesn't blow teams out the way this spread suggests. Even during their recent homestand, when they were clearly in control of most games, they didn't create separation. Those wins came through execution, not domination. Close finishes, tight margins, long stretches where the opponent stayed within striking distance. That matters a lot when you're laying double digits. Now let's talk Memphis, because this team is far more competitive than their recent results suggest. I've watched them closely, and what stands out is that they don't fold. Even in losses, even when the fourth quarter gets away from them, they still generate offense, still attack mismatches, still make teams work. Their issue hasn't been effort, it's been finishing. And that's a big difference when we're talking about covering a number instead of winning outright. Memphis has shown all season that they can hang around in games that look ugly on paper. They've stayed alive in spots where logic says they shouldn't. They're capable of playing loose, aggressive basketball without the pressure of expectations. And that's often when underdogs are at their most dangerous. Houston wants control. Memphis wants chaos. When those two styles collide, I usually lean toward points rather than signs. Another thing I can't ignore is game flow. Houston prefers a measured tempo, but that doesn't automatically translate into margin. Slower games shrink possessions, and fewer possessions make large spreads harder to clear. Even if Houston controls the night, that control doesn't guarantee distance on the scoreboard. For Memphis, the path is simple. Stay connected early, avoid the late quarter collapses we've seen too often, and force Houston to execute every single possession. I don't need perfection, I just need resistance. And that's why, when everything is weighed, pace, recent margins, stylistic contrast, and situational context, I land where I land. My final pick for this game is Memphis to cover the 12-point spread in Houston. I'm not asking them to win. I'm asking them to compete, to stay within range, and to make this a four-quarter conversation. From where I'm sitting, that's the smartest play on the board.